the Sun Belt, keeping divisions for now. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, we will go over a few things that the commissioner said yesterday in day one of a media days. We'll also talk about, as it's Sun Belt, it's day two today, what Sun Belt West coaches are on the hot seat. I think there's probably just two. And I don't think it's a big surprise. One may be hotter than the other, to be honest with you. But let's talk about, I don't think it was news or anything along those lines, but my guy Craig Stevenson from AL.com asked the commissioner about the Sun Belt keeping divisions. They're the only major Division I college football conference that still has the divisions. And courtesy of ESPN, this is what the commissioner, Gill, said.
Discussions about changing it and decided that it really was the best course of action for us relative to the games that we're trying to play and the opponents that we're trying to make sure our teams see regularly, what we're trying to do to support our fans. We brought together a lot of historical rivalries when we added schools, and we want to do everything we can to facilitate as many kind of competitions between those teams as possible. I would say that we'll always evaluate it. We certainly will, as we look through this first year of the CFP, if we notice that we could put ourselves in a better kind of advantageous situation with some modifications or changes, we'll certainly consider those. So I would say that, we're never going to be so obtuse to say that it's always going to be that way. If we see factors that indicate we should change it, we certainly will consider that. But right now, we feel really good about it. We feel that's a core part of who we are, and we're going to kind of keep moving forward in the direction of having divisions.
All right, so we're keeping it for now. If things change, probably expansion, we may change it down the road. The thing you don't want to do is overreact a couple of times to where, one division is dominating the other division, and the two top teams are in one side of the conference. SEC's had a lot with that, a lot on the West compared to the East in years past. They're doing it, and some of those big time rivalries are gone by the wayside now, or will be gone by the wayside. That there's going to be a rotation and no divisions in the SEC, whereas you always want App to play Georgia Southern. You always want ODU to play Marshall. You want JMU in there playing everybody. In the East, the Cajuns don't have a rival except, oh, goodness, Southern Miss. So the last thing you want to do is start to build up that rivalry and then tear it down moving forward. So I like the divisions. You are going to get anomalies, and I'm not going to try and say that word again because I said it right the first time, where, as I mentioned, you may get the two best teams in the Sun Belt are on one side of the division, are on one side of the conference. What happens if, Texas State and Arkansas State are the two best teams in the conference? I think we've had that before, right? Like JMU and Coastal. Maybe they were the two best teams in the conference. And they were on one side. So you don't want to overreact to things that, can easily fluctuate. But I like the idea of keeping the divisions. I think that is the way to go. App State is sold out of tickets. I mean, that's outstanding, right? The Cajuns are building a new stadium. JMU is probably going to get around to building half a new stadium, which is really all they need. And the Georgia Southern has put in a bunch of new money to their facilities. South Alabama has a relatively new stadium, very much so a new stadium. They need to upgrade the athletic facilities outside of that. South Alabama has some of the better group of 5 facilities out there. They just need that one more weight room deal. And I'm sure that's in the plans. But you're getting all these teams, and then that pushes everybody else, right? The Cajuns, I think, were the first one to do this, and that was, under Mark Hudspeth, to get those kind of facilities. JMU has always kind of been that way, right? I remember being in Lafayette when the Cajuns finished their facilities, and like Florida didn't have an indoor facility. Like they didn't even have something to practice out of the rain. Miami built one. They only had enough money or space, but I got to believe money, where the indoor facility, practice facility in Miami, so it's too hot and it always rains, was 70 yards. They didn't even have a full football field, right? You need 120 yards basically for a full football field, 50 in each direction, and then 10 yards for the end zones, and they only had 70 at one point in time, and I think they've completed it. So think about that. All that success in Florida and Miami, and the indoor facility for UL was there way before their nice workout facilities and new offices. And places like Florida and Miami did not have them. All right, and now we're on some sort of arms race where Alabama, LSU, Clemson are pouring in all this money into these facilities. Some may be overdoing it a bit, in terms of how comfortable their chairs are at their locker room. They got a slide going from the second floor to the first floor. Things a barber shop. Some things that are nice and for players' conveniences, but not necessarily helping you to win football games. And there is a minimum. When you need to come outside and be in the kiddie pool for an ice bath, that seems to be an issue. Now, maybe they're doing that because you can't get 105 guys in the ice bath at the same time during, camp. But, you probably need to upgrade your facilities at that point in time. But I think the rivalries help with that. We've talked about this incessantly about the Cajuns now with Southern Miss. Like there's no game that draws people to the stadium. At one point in time, it may have been App State, may have been ULM when ULM was any good about a decade ago. Then it was Coastal. You don't play them every year. South Alabama could be it, but these two teams, South Alabama and the Cajuns, can't seem to be good at the same time. But it really is Southern Miss. That may have started in baseball, but it's certainly now carried over to football. And as much as the Cajuns can't lose to Texas State, they can't seem to beat Southern Miss. They've lost at least 2 years in a row to Southern Miss. So I love the idea of sticking with the divisions for now. And I think that's a good way to go for Keith Gill and the Sun Belt. All right. He also mentioned something else. He talked about not wanting a playoff or having a separate poll for the G5. We will talk about that when we come back after I tell you about Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down closer to when it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League tickets. You guys know this. I told you I did it with the NBA playoffs. It was Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. We surprised my nephew on his high school graduation weekend. They picked me up at the airport, and we already had the tickets and the parking, and it was outstanding. Really, really easy. I showed them the view of where we were sitting, although it was a little bit high. And it was simple throughout the process. Please take advantage of Gametime. You can get those flash deals when you save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. You get that lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you with 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. The other thing, this was not a question This was in Keith Gill's statement, which was about 20 minutes long. A well thought out statement. Also courtesy of ESPN, talking about being in a separate playoff or, want a separate G5 top 25 poll.
The expanded CFP offers a great opportunity for the Sun Belt. I've heard some conversations of a playoff separate from the CFP that would include only institutions from FBS non-autonomy. I've also heard some conversations about a poll, a top 25 poll that would only be for schools from FBS non-autonomy. I just want to be clear on our thoughts with regards to that. We just aren't really interested. The Sun Belt is fully committed to the CFP and only wants to participate in polls and postseason that includes all 9 FBS conferences and Notre Dame. We do not seek greatness with caveats. We just seek greatness.
Yeah, like that. That's a great line. We don't seek greatness with caveats, but we just seek greatness. I'm with him. I know some people out there. Matt Moscona doesn't want any part of the G5 guys in the playoff. Josh Pate doesn't want any part of it, right? Josh Pate is telling me that Alabama and South Alabama play 2 different games. I'm on the mindset that you got about 30 teams in FBS football that are on the same level, and then everybody else is playing a different game. We'll see what my Orange do this year, but is Syracuse University playing the same game as Alabama? Really, is Boston College? Not really thinking so. So I don't know why we're picking on the G5. I'm all for this. I do 2 things. I don't think a G5 team is going to win a national championship anytime soon, but let's see what happens over the next 2 years. And we're going to get a lot of excuses if there's injuries in conference championship games. But I'll tell you, I'm not going to want to hear it. If the backup quarterback at a G5 school, at a Power 4 school, if you want to call it that, Power 4 school, can't beat the starting quarterback and the starters of a G5 team, then the Power 4 school made a mistake, right? Like the backup shouldn't be, and it's, different maybe in this day and age, shouldn't be a true freshman. And if he is a true freshman, he's been there all season. Somewhere along the way, he should have gotten reps, just in case. But that will happen. I do believe. I don't know if they'll win 2 ball games, and you probably won't get a top, 12 team knocking off a number 1 team. But we may see it this year, right? We'll find out very quickly if Texas State is a possibility. They get UTSA and Arizona State first 2 out of 3 ball games. All right. Now Arizona State wasn't all that good. And, they lost to UTSA last year. But all of a sudden, whether they're preseason top 25 or not, they start out 3-0, they'll start getting votes. Okay. App State, same thing. App State actually has the schedule for it, right? Week 2 at Clemson. Clemson's coming off the game against Georgia. And here's going to be the little problem, if you want to consider it a problem, with App State. App State goes 2-0 and beats Clemson. And Clemson starts out 0-2. All the pub is going to be on Clemson. It's just going to be the way it is. If Clemson loses to Georgia and then loses at home to App State, it's not going to be on App State, unfortunately. It'll be on Dabo, not, taking in the NIL money and the transfer portal. That'll be the conversation. All right. Clemson's over and done with. Doesn't change the fact that App State will be 2-0, and they'll also be getting votes. Heck, if they go 2-0, they could be in the top 25 if they beat Clemson on the road. And then they get ECU. I think that's on the road. And they're hosting Liberty at home. So we'll know, I think that's like the 5th game of the year. We'll know less than halfway during the season if App State's available. All right. And then if these 2 teams, and you'd be hard pressed to do it, but if they don't finish 12th, right, they get the 10th seed, and now they're playing a 3 seed. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I don't think you'll ever get a, 6-7 seed or something like that, right? Or a 5-6 seed. Well, hold on. My mistake, right? The first 4 teams, all right, check that, reverse it. The first 4 teams are getting a bye. So now you get a 5 seed is playing the 12 seed. All All right. All of a sudden a 10 seed is playing a 7 seed. I mean, I don't be surprised when a G5 team wins a playoff game and Josh Pate starts hearing it. And he'll go, well, they're not going to win a national championship. Yeah, but that's not the point. They're competing. And they just knocked off your Power 5 team. Right? Because the 5th seed, most likely, is not going to be a conference champion. We'll see if it is, if it's a second place, is going to be the team that loses in the SEC championship game, or is it going to be like the second place team in the Big Ten or the second place team in the ACC? It'll be very interesting to see how that lines up. But yeah, sorry about that little confusion. You're going to have a shot. This isn't going to be 12, we'll see what they do with the 14 teams and the 16 teams, because I don't think there's going to be any buys. But with the 12-team playoff, it's not 1 versus 12, 5 versus 12, 7 versus 10. You got Joey Aguilar, who may have, 35 to 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns and a handful of yards on the ground, going up against the number 7 seed, which will probably be a team that may not have even played in the conference championship game. We'll see. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm glad that Keith Gill says, no, we're good. We're right where we want to be. We just want a chance to compete. As I said, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, sports, politics, college football. The people who have the money don't want to give up the money. And so those Power 5 teams don't want the little guys to get any of the money, right? I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten already think they're carrying college football. They certainly don't want to lose to somebody. And you can see the steam coming out of Greg Sankey's ears if, a number 10 App State takes down Ole Miss. They'll change those rules fast. All right, let's take a timeout. When we come back, are there more than 2 coaches in the Sun Belt West on the hot seat? We'll do that right after this. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Be sure to tune in to my guy, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. That could be, having said all what I just did, the most exciting part of college football this season. You got new rivalries, old rivalries, new teams coming in, and Chris Gordy has you, wait for it, locked in, or in this case, locked on to all of the SEC. He had plenty of guests during SEC Media Days. He will be playing those all year long. So be sure to go on and go to YouTube and check out my buddy, Chris Gordy. You can see where's the finger? Right there in the corner, Locked On SEC. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. And I really don't like doing this. I'm not a big fan of anybody suggesting that people should be fired. But remember, these coaches are basically, condemning themselves, if you want to look at it that way. So both Will Hall and Mike Desimo are saying it's time to win. All right. And they both said it's time to step up. Southern Miss was picked 6th in the division. UL, I think they'll still had 2nd, but they picked 4th by the coaches. No, maybe picked 3rd. Yeah, I think Arkansas State was still picked 4th. And so it's very different. Mike Desimo has been to 2 bowl games, but lost in both. And we've been through this, reasons or excuses. I think they're reasons, injuries across the offensive line and the quarterbacks. Both years. Already starting with an injured quarterback, if you will. We'll see if Ben Wildridge we'll find out maybe today where we are with Ben Wildridge and his health going into practice starting in about a week. But they both know it's time to win. Mike Desimo, I've done a couple different things. All right. Are they overrated? Because their over-under number was 8.5. And then can they challenge for a Sun Belt title when you start to think, again, they got good running backs. Offensive line is healthy and experienced. Defensive line is healthy and experienced. Linebackers, defensive backfield. And again, their most explosive players may be their young wide receivers. All right. If they threw it to the tight end more, we would appreciate that. But really, the quarterback is the question. And that has been the question with Will Hall. He just has not been able to get that quarterback. We're supposed to be Ty Keys, and it has not worked out that way. And he just has not had a quarterback to settle on, with Frank Gore maybe being his best one. That was a situation that they just haven't figured out. Now, Tate Rodemaker is coming over from Florida State, and can he be the guy? And if he plays well, does he stay for 2 years? And what does that mean, right? So Will Hall, they had to build up, all right, and then they did. They had a bad first year. Second year, they went to a bowl game. Third year was a disappointment. Fired himself as offensive coordinator, and they're sort of starting again. What are they expecting, this year out of, Will Hall? He's expecting to win and contend. That may be pushing it, but if he gets to a bowl game, same thing with Mike Desimo, right? I'm a big fan of Mike, local product, huge, former, player, obviously, but did not come with a lot of experience when he got the job outside of the Cajuns. And a lot of fans were like, this was kind of the homer cost-effective pick, if you will. Again, a lot of things changed right when he got there. It wasn't only the portal, it was the portal and NIL, because Billy Napier took a bunch of the coaches and a bunch of the players. But again, that a little bit of a reason, but also an excuse because, everybody else had to deal with that as well. But admittedly, he's like, now is the year. All right. Where everybody else in the West, is either heading in the right direction or brand new, right? Arkansas State, Butch Jones, finally heading in the right direction. If he falls back again to what they were before last year, he'll be back on the hot seat. I think he was on the hot seat last year heading into the season, and Red Wolves fans said, no, he wasn't. All right. South Alabama, Major Applewhite just got the gig. Obviously, there's no hot seat. It could be a disappointing season, but that wouldn't even be medium. The big thing is to get the quarterback, Gio Lopez, going, and he'll be in good shape moving forward. Texas State, G.J. Kinney, it's kind of it's championship or bust, but obviously he's not on the hot seat. And Jared Parker just got to Troy, and Brian Vincent just got to ULM. Now, there's different levels, not even of a hot seat, but they expect to win. Right? Jared Parker can't use the excuse, the new coach, left some holes. Well, the previous new coach just won back-to-back titles, right? Brian Vincent is just looking to win. Can you imagine if 3 wins is considered a good season, right? It's one thing to compete, but somehow if he wins 3 or 4 ball games, then he can sit there and tell you, yeah, we're competitive. So I just think that, and it's not even me putting him on the hot seat. The only 2 coaches in the West that are on the hot seat put themselves there. Will Hall saying we got to win, or there'll probably be somebody new here. And Mike Desimo was basically saying the same thing. Now, a little bit disappointing that it was heading in one direction with Zeon Chris, because if Zeon Chris was there, I think they would have been picked to win it, the division, and maybe the championship. Big difference when we don't know the quarterback position. Okay, we will do hopefully another episode for tomorrow. This one a little bit late. Sorry about that. By the time I got to it, it was too late. Staying at my brother's, waiting to move into my new place, and it was a little bit late, and they tell me that I'm loud. So we didn't want to wake them up or keep them up. So thank you so much for tuning in. We're almost at 1,340 subscribers. Really appreciate that. Keep it coming. I guess we're not probably going to get to 1,500, but we're going to keep on pushing for it. Could be closer to 1,400 by the time the season gets around, but still 1,500 is the goal by August 31st. Really appreciate everybody's support. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Dave Schultz, and you've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.